Welcome to the story of us, from cosmic dawn to the depths of being. I'm your host, Jeff Ellison, and today I have an episode that I want to call The Stranger in the Mirror. And I'm going to tell you a story to start. It happened to me on an ordinary Tuesday morning not too long ago. There was no dramatic lighting, no sweeping orchestra swell, just me, a steamed up bathroom mirror, and the sudden, slightly terrifying realization that my father was staring right back at me. I had to wipe the fog and take a second hard look. He was still there. Not a memory of him, not a resemblance I could politely dismiss. Him. The outline of my lips, the eyes settling in around the edges, the particular way exhaustion arranges itself on a face that has been places, seen things, and carried some heavy baggage. I stood there longer than I probably should have, my toothbrush suspended midair, doing the kind of math you can't undo once you've done it. This feeling was not simple. I have to guess it probably never is with fathers and sons. There was a touch of comfort in it, I guess. That ancient, wordless reassurance of continuity, of belonging to something longer than yourself. And there was something else too, a low grade subsurface panic attack. The clock suddenly ticking audibly in my head, the face in the mirror whispering quietly back at me, "Yo, Jeff, time's catching up with you. Whether you're ready or not, here it comes." I put the toothbrush down, wiped the dribble from my beard, and looked for a long moment at this person. At the same time, familiar and foreign. And I asked the question that has been quietly following me ever since. Who exactly is this guy? It's disorienting to suddenly recognize you aren't who you used to be. This concept of changing identity seems important for humans to grasp fully. The fact that over a lifetime, you'll be a different version of the same person who speaks to constant becoming. Not grasping to the old you seems essential to human growth. There's a question I ask every guest who sits across from me on the story of us, from cosmic dawn to the depths of being. I ask it in two directions at once. First, what does this version of yourself want to tell the younger version of yourself? And second, if you've listened to a bunch of our shows, and I know you have, the question is, knowing the recording will exist long after this moment, what does this version of yourself want to say to your future self? That's past and future held in the same breath. The person you were, the person you are, and the person that you haven't met yet. I ask it of my guests because the answers are always revealing. I've been asking it of myself ever since. It turns out the mirror is not the only place a person comes face to face with a stranger. Here's the thing we know intellectually, but resist with everything we have. You are not the same person you were 10 years ago, or 5, or if we're being really honest, last year. The cells in your body replace themselves on a rolling schedule. Your skeleton rebuilds itself roughly every 10 years. Your skin renews itself monthly, your liver every few years. Biologically speaking, you're a ship of Theseus. Every plank quietly swapped out while you were busy living. The person who graduated high school, who fell in love for the first time, who held their newborn child, that person shares your name and your memories, but they're not precisely you. Buddhism understood this long before neuroscience caught up. The concept of anicca, or impermanence, it sits at the very core of the Buddha's teaching. Nothing's fixed. Nothing holds still. The self is not a noun, it's a verb, a process, an ongoing, never finished becoming. And yet, we humans, we cling. Good God, how we cling. We cling to old versions of ourselves the way we cling to old photographs, insisting that the person frozen in that frame is somehow more real than the one that's standing here now, older and stranger and infinitely more complicated. We describe ourselves using identities that expired many years ago. We make decisions based on who we used to be rather than who we're becoming, and we suffer. And this is the part the Buddhists were very clear about. We suffer not because change happens, but because we refuse to let it. Some identity shifts come slowly, almost imperceptibly, like the way a shoreline changes, grain by grain, until one day you stand there and nothing looks quite like it did. You don't remember becoming patient or cynical or gentler than you once were. You just notice one unremarkable afternoon that you are. And then there are these pivotal moments, the moments you can actually point to, the before and the after with a very clear line between them. I know mine. Graduation. The morning I walked across a stage and felt simultaneously the enormous pride of completion and the terror, the absolute terror of now what? The first time I understood that no one was going to hand me the next chapter, I was going to have to write it. My daughter's getting ready to face this herself, and I can sense the same underlying sense of anxiety and awareness of change in her. Another pivotal point for me was studying and traveling overseas. The world just cracked open, not metaphorically, structurally, when you move across the globe with untethered freedom. Live for a spell inside another culture, eat its food, stumble through its language, navigate its special rhythms. Something in you permanently rearranges. The version of me that came back to Kentucky from my Europe 97 trip was not the one who left. He knew in his bones, now rather than just his head, that his way of seeing the world was a way, not the way. That realization is humbling and quietly liberating all at once. It's never fully left me, and I hope you guys have the opportunity to feel that in your bones one day and it never leaves you. And another moment that really was definitive for me was having my children. Nothing restructures identity like being responsible for a life that did not ask to be here. The selfishness you didn't even know you had gets slowly, sometimes painfully metabolized into something else. You discover capacities and capabilities for love you had no idea you possessed. You're going to also discover fears you had no idea were possible. You become, overnight, someone whose heart now walks around outside their body. You're never entirely the same person again. And I got to tell you, this is especially true for women. God bless them. Yeah, turning 50. That was another one. That was a particular mirror moment for me. The math becoming impossible to ignore. The quiet, clarifying question that midlife eventually asks everyone who is paying attention. Is this the life I actually want? Or is it just the one I accidentally built? Now that's a reckoning dressed up like a birthday. Another big one for me was exploring Buddhist philosophy and meditation. I came to this not as a spiritual tourist, but as someone who needed some tools. What I found was something more useful than I expected, a framework that suggested the very self I was trying to protect and improve might be, in some fundamental sense, a construction. that the thoughts I was having and the emotions I was feeling were not me. They were weather passing through me. That beneath all that noise, all that surface level tension, there was something quieter and more stable than any identity I'd ever tried on for size. I'm still learning this, and I suspect I always will. The Story of Us project was another pivotal moment for me. It may sound trivial, but the moment I stopped consuming other people's meaning and started trying to make my own was special. There's something that happens when you commit publicly to a purpose, when you say out loud to anyone who will listen, this matters to me, and I'm going to pursue it. You become in some real way accountable to the version of yourself you meant it. The project didn't just give me something to do, it gave me somebody to be. And those two questions I ask every guest turn out to be the most clarifying questions I've ever asked myself, too. Every answer I've ever heard has quietly rearranged something inside me. There have been a lot of pivotal moments. Most of the time, you're going to change versions of yourself, like I said, very gradually over time. But the final one for me that I felt like was a doorway to another person was when I really started dealing with some chronic pain. I'll say this briefly because it deserves honesty without a bunch of dramatics, but pain changes you. And I'm talking about persistent, uninvited, body altering pain that has a way of quietly redrawing the map of who you thought you were. It strips away certain vanities. It teaches you sometimes pretty harshly about limitation. It also, and this is the part that surprised me, it also has a way of clarifying what actually matters when you can no longer do everything you once could. I'm still in this particular becoming. I don't yet know who it's making me, but I'm trying to let it teach rather than diminish me. Okay, let's go back to that story, back to that Tuesday, back to that face in the mirror. My dad and I have a complicated story as fathers and sons often do. Now the love was always there underneath the complexity, the way bedrock's always there beneath the soil. Present, foundational, not always visible. There are things I absorbed from him that I'm really grateful for. There are things I swore with the passionate certainty of youth that I would never repeat. Some of those things I have, in fact, not repeated. Some of them I catch myself mid sentence and hear his voice coming out of my mouth and feel a complicated mix of recognition and surrender. That's the thing no one warned you about becoming your parent. It isn't a betrayal of yourself, it is, in its way, a kind of mercy. It's an understanding, arriving late and uninvited, that the person who shaped you was also shaped. That they were also once a young person trying to figure it all out without a manual. That the story didn't begin with you and it will not end with you, and that is not a loss. That's lineage. But the panic is real too. I won't dress it up. When I see the aging in that mirror, the new lines, the slower recoveries, the face becoming more settled into itself in ways that feel both earned and encroaching, I feel the clock ticking. The actual physical awareness that this is not a rehearsal, that the years behind me are starting to outnumber certain possibilities ahead, and that the window for some things is narrowing. I haven't made peace with this yet. I got to be honest. I'm in the process of making peace with this. There is a difference, and I think it's important to say so. What I have come to slowly, imperfectly, is something like this. The panic is not the enemy, the panic is information, it's the self. awake enough to understand its own impermanence, asking urgently, "Are you paying attention? Uh, are you here? Are you living in a way that will mean something when you look back from wherever the road finally ends?" The Buddhist in me noticed that this is too just thought arising, but the human in me ignores the Buddhist and feels the panic anyway. Both things are true. That's what it means to be in the middle of your own becoming. Here's what I've learned, or I'm learning that halting two steps forward way that real learning usually goes. Clinging to an old version of yourself is not loyalty. It's a kind of grief distressed up as identity. The 25-year-old you had his gifts. He also had his blind spots and his smallnessness, his things he didn't know yet. The 40-year-old you was doing the best he could with what he had. And so is the person in the mirror today. The question is not, who was I? The question is, who am I becoming? And is that person someone I want to be? Growth doesn't happen in attachment. It happens in the release, in the willingness to look at the stranger in the mirror, the one with your dad's eyes and your own hard earned bald spot and wrinkles and gray hair, and say, "Hello, I don't entirely know you yet, but I'm glad you're here. Let's see what you've got." Now, if you're listening to this and you're an honest to goodness human being and not some chatbot, then you, yourself, you're in the middle of your own becoming. Not the beginning, not the end, the luminous, complicated, unrepeatable middle, which is, it turns out, where all the real living happens. Every guest who sits across from me on the Story of Us gets asked the same two questions before we're done. So I'm going to ask them of you now, and I want you to take them seriously, please. What does this version of yourself want to tell the younger version of yourself? And then, knowing that some future you will one day look back at this exact moment, at who you are right now, at the life you're standing in the middle of today, what do you want to tell them? What do you want them to know? Don't rush past those two. Let them marinate. Let them make you a little uncomfortable. The discomfort means that they're working. Because here's what I've come to believe after every conversation, every pivot, every morning I've stood at that mirror trying to figure out who's looking back at me. The examined life isn't a burden, it's the whole point. The willingness to ask yourself hard questions, to turn towards the stranger in the mirror with curiosity instead of a sense of dread. That isn't excessive self absorption. It's the bravest, most human thing that you can do. Your story is still being written. The next version of you is already on the way. The only question is whether you'll greet them with open arms or spend your energy mourning the one who came before them. The mirror is there, it's waiting. So is the person on the other side of it. I'd love to know from you guys, what's been your biggest identity pivot, the moment that cracked you open and left someone slightly different standing in the rubble? So do me a favor, go to our website, visit our blog, go to the transcribed version of this conversation, and give me a like. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, what others? Blue Sky, YouTube. I don't know. There's so many. But I appreciate you listening. Thank you. The circle is always open. And your story belongs in it. Peace be with you, my friends.